Welcome to the Market Mystics podcast. I'm Joshua.
I'm Kim. Let's dive in. And we're back.
Welcome.
Welcome back, you guys. Welcome back, Joshua. We didn't have any gaps in episodes, but he was gone we had like a week and a half between recording, and that is a long time for us.
That is a long time for us. It felt like quite a while.
It did. But here we are, fresh and new today. So hopefully this will be a good conversation. Josh, I have a question for you.
Okay.
You know how you're doing icebreakers? I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
What's one of your favorite smells?
Ooh. Like fresh bread or fresh cookies, like something fresh baked like that. I think is just such a nice smell.
Love it. Good answer.
I've gone through phases where I've had like weird answers to that. Like I used to work at the airport, and I worked fueling airplanes, and I like got used to the smell of jet fuel, and like it was like weird. Like there was some, I wouldn't say it smelled good, but it would like take me back to a time and place, and had like a good memory with it.
It was like nostalgic for you.
Yeah. But anytime
that.
I smell that now, I'm just like, oh yeah, like that whole season of my life. Like I worked at the airport for 10 years, so like it was a pretty like substantial part where like that was a real common smell.
That's funny. Okay.
What's yours?
Oh, probably something coconutty. I went to, I grew up going to Hawaii every now and then, and I've always been very much a beach kind of person. And then I went to school out there, and so I think the coconut is actually associated with sunscreen. But I'm not going to say I like the smell of sunscreen. It is a coconut thing for me.
I do like the smell of sunscreen.
But it's coconutty, and you don't like coconut.
Yeah, and I don't like sunscreen either.
Well, that's funny.
But I do like the smell of like that tropical sunscreen with coconut in it.
Yep, same. It's because it feels very beachy, right?
It does. It feels very beachy. It takes me right back there.
Same. It's another nostalgia thing.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so today I want to talk about. We've done an episode that had a title that was like, "What is a mystic?" And I've been thinking a bit more on some of this, and I think it's way more simple than I've ever made it.
Let's hear it.
And I was having a conversation with my husband this past weekend. We went on a fairly short road trip. And we were actually listening to one of our episodes, which is something that I don't make a practice of. But he was like, hey, I wanted to listen to this one episode. So we put it on and then paused it like 5 minutes and then had our whole other conversation. But we were talking about like how taboo it can be to be like a Christian mystic or put that title on you. And I was saying like how necessary I feel like it has been to almost distinguish that I'm not the same as I was before, like as just a Christian. And that's what I would say about myself. Like I was just a Christian, like things shifted and it feels like more. And so it almost felt to me like, oh, I need to kind of be able to explain a little bit of what the more is. And so there's kind of been a movement in this. And I think the general word that's been used is mystic. And I think that does fine. I mean, the definition of it is one who seeks the mysteries, right? And I would say that's true for me. Like I'm constantly seeking the mysteries. But what I think it really is, if I really dial it in even further, is I just am one who seeks. And I think that's really what a mystic is. That's really what the mystic movement is different about. So it's instead of simply asking or praying, which that's what I feel like I was taught growing up in Christianity. Like, you're very much taught to pray. You know what I mean? To pray and to ask. And, you know, ask and it will be given unto you. Except that there is more to that, even in scripture. Like, ask and you will receive, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened. Mm-hmm. Right? And I think we kind of stop short of that. And even with the Lord's Prayer, when Jesus said, when you pray, pray like this, we took it as, this is how you ask, right? But also part of that is seeking the will of God, you know?
Yeah.
Your will be done. But I think we kind of got stuck on the ask part. And I just really think so much of this that we've been experiencing and so many people are going through is like discovering the seek.
I love that, discovering the seek. I do think like language is important because it helps us like frame what's going on. Like it helps us frame that, give it meaning, give it context. And so like you were saying, like just the calling ourselves Christian mystics, like it works. I don't know that it's like the best,
right?
But it works because we started operating in a way that is different from the way our Western mindset understood Christianity.
Yeah.
And so we needed something else to call it, because what we had been calling it didn't really resonate or fully, like it didn't fully explain it. And so I think that's like, that's such a key piece, is what words are you using to explain it? Because then when you have conversations with someone, it's like, that's as soon as you say something, like if I tell you like elephant, immediately, whether or not you want to or not, your brain starts thinking about an elephant based on your experiences of seeing an elephant. And so if I just say Christian, your brain immediately starts thinking of how you have seen, what pattern is a Christian to you. And so even if like mystic Christian isn't perfect, at least it makes you go, oh wait, like that's different from what I'm used to. What, like, do you have a framework for that already? Or if you don't have a framework, does it make you say, well, what's that? Like, what's different about that? And that in and of itself, like that questioning is the mystic part. Like it is the asking questions. I think just as much as seeking, the asking questions is a part of being a mystic, like wanting to find out more. Why is it that way? What, just all the different questions you could possibly ask. I think like that is a piece of that seeking. That's a piece of that mystical part.
Yeah, I think that's so good. I was thinking about, just as you were talking about that, like looking more for the whole or the fullness, right? And it just, I guess it made me think about, and I'm speaking from my own experience, but I don't think it's unique. I think that when I was taught to pray, to ask, I wasn't taught to pray and ask for revelation or for newness. I was taught to ask from the provider, which is very much a role of the creator of God, right? Jehovah Jireh is the provider, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is one attribute that we see throughout scripture. It is, he's revealed himself in that way to many people many times. But I think that when I'm talking about seeking, that's what it is. It's that, who is the whole? What is the whole? Can I get more of the fullness? And can I look outside of the one attribute that maybe even has served me well over the years, but I know that there's more. And so can I look for that as well? And I kind of think about it. I mean, maybe I feel like I always use this example. Like my children know me as their mother. And as a baby, they see me purely as their provider, right? I provide care, I provide safety, I provide food, I provide a way to get some sleep, like a clean diaper, whatever. But as they grow up, they start to know me as more than that. And I am still that. But also, I might be a confidant, and I might be a teacher, and I might be, I don't know, a number of other things. But I think that's kind of where I am with God and seeking is, I've known you as this, but I want to know you more. Mm. And I want to know more about even who you are in me and who you've made me to be. And I think that's really where I'm getting with this whole mystic movement. Like, I just think it's seeking, right? And it's, for me, it's been looking outside the box and then tearing down the next box that I build and then trying to look outside of the next box too, because I'm also a box builder.
I think the language of it is important. I was just talking to your husband, Jason, about this earlier today. Like, in the Bible, like for a lot of the Old Testament, they referred to God as how he showed up for them. Like, that's right. Where we get all the different names of God. Is because that's how they experienced him, is what they called him. And I think our language is limited to the point where we try to put everything in one thing. And just like we were talking about the language of Christian or mystic Christian, like sometimes you need a broader definition because it's, although maybe it's similar, it's not quite showing up in the same way. And so you need better language for it. And I think the same thing is true about prayer. Like, I did a quick Google search of like types of prayer in the Bible, and there's 9 different ones. Like, there's 9, according to this list, sure, of like types of praying prayers. And that is like, oh, well, we just call everything prayer. But there's like, does it give it more definition if I call it adoration, or if I call it confession, or like, I think supplication is the one that we usually know. It's like, supplication is the prayer of making a request or petition to God, whether for yourself or another. Mm-hmm. Like, that's probably where my mind goes the most. But there's all different types of ways of praying, ways of interacting, just like there's like, we may have a conversation, but within that conversation, there's so many nuances about what we talk about and how we talk about it. And that, I think, is like, that's the key in what we're talking about, is this, like, it's broader than we know. And that's part of being a mystic is like you said, breaking that box to see it in a bigger box, so that you can break that box and see it in a bigger box. Like, I think we will always have a box, because I think that's how, as long as we have a nervous system, I think we'll have a box, because that's how we were created. But like, can you grow? Can you expand? Can it be like, can it be like this solid structure that you're willing at a moment to lay down because you see a greater structure? Like, that's kind of how I view this walk, is like, it's not that all of it is mush and nothing is stable, but can it be a firm, stable foundation that you build upon, and that like adding rooms to a house rather than like totally deconstructing everything to the ground every time. Like,
Right. It's like building a staircase. Like if you don't have the solid foundation, even on just the last step behind you, the next one is not going to be able to stand well. And the first one also had to be solid, and the second one also had to be solid. And I think you're exactly right. It's not tearing it down to reconstruct something. Although sometimes, okay, let's be real. I've had to tear some crap down. But it was because things weren't quite constructed well. And the Lord wanted to show me a different way, or wanted to rebuild it in a way that wasn't maybe including idolatry, or that maybe wasn't twisted from the way that I originally learned it, or originally took it even, I mean, sometimes that does happen, but I think in the process of maturing and building those new boxes, it is building upon the last, and it is for advancement. So I think you're dead on with that. So what would you say in your own walk? How did you shift? Because we've been on different journeys, even just like shifting from more mainstream Christianity into the mystic world. Like, what made you first start seeking? Or was it first seeking? Or what kind of like, what was the hump that opened it?
Yeah, I always give my parents credit for this, because they really led me in a life of like not being satisfied with the way things were, but always thinking it could be better. There could be something more. There could be a deeper thing. But also, I think the prophetic movement really led me into this movement, because I don't think it's that dissimilar. Like, for us to sit down and take someone through an ascension in heaven where they have a conversation with God is not too different from listening to some of the old prophets like Bob Jones or some of those people talk about, or Bobby Connor, like give a prophetic word where God told them something. Like, it's very, very similar. And so I think that like being exposed to some of those people opened the door for me to like step into what is now called like Christian mysticism, because it felt so similar. It's like, oh, well, it just like, it's a personal relationship where God is sharing mysteries and where you're exploring heaven. Like, you're not waiting to die to experience God in a greater aspect than you had before. And that, I think, is that's how I feel like I stepped into it. Was one, just a foundation of always looking, and two, being exposed to things that, like, when I first heard like Ian Clayton, like, he could be really far out, but what he was saying felt not that far from some of the other things I'd heard from people.
Yeah. You're talking about the prophetic movement, and I find it really interesting because those guys were going and getting the words straight from God. which is essentially what we're now doing. Like that's essentially what the mystic movement should be, because you're seeking on your own, right? But I wonder, like, I really wonder if the prophetic movement was so very necessary for capital C church to be able to then step up into being able to then seek on their own, to first see it displayed for them and the truth that's in it, and a lot of those prophecies really coming to pass and seeing the power and the divine in it. If it, I don't know, I almost think of it like crossing the Jordan. Like there had to be people along the way who were helping others across.
Yeah.
And I don't even know that the seeking is the promised land. You know what I mean? I think probably the wholeness, the fullness is the promised land in that analogy. But it's like, I guess I'm just seeing the necessity of what was and having those foundations to then build upon for the next step. Right. And then people like Ian, who are way forerunners in the mystic movement, being able to help people seek on their own. And then, but then I also wonder what's next. Yeah. Are we going to knock next?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I think the transition, not that the prophetic movement is totally over, but I do think that it has waned in its prominence. And I think the big reason for that is what it opened the door for was what you said, like it opened the door for you to not need to go to another person to get your word from God, but for you to be able to go do it yourself. Yeah. It opened the door for you not to have to go to like a Benny Hinn type person to get healed, but you can go and get healed yourself. Like it opened the door for that relationship for everyone. And I think it was a needed step. Like I think we needed that to get there. But I still think that we're pretty early in where we are. Like we're still pretty early in convincing people that they can go themselves.
This is true. And you know what? Even just in our experience with the ministry that we've led for, it's 10 years this year, Josh.
Wow, that's amazing.
Which is crazy. But even with that, like it was so much like really trying to get people to seek on their own. And even then, people who hear it and believe it and see the power that's in it, we would still find people who then only want to receive from the leadership. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we'll take that experience and that prophecy as truth, but then it's like not taking it and then seeking on their own. And I think if I'm ever teaching, that is what I want. And I feel like we've ended so many of our episodes like this, Josh, where it's like, take this for what it is. Please go seek on your own. Ask the Father about this. See if he confirms it, if he gives you another word, all of those things. And I don't want to stop saying that though. You know, because I don't want this to be, oh, well, Kim and Josh said this, and so it must be true because they have a relationship with God. Well, it's true for me, but really the power lies in you seeking on your own, right? And I think that's where we are. But then also I see so many people who have been powerful, valuable leaders in the prophetic movement who are resisting and denying and really coming down on the seeker movement. And I also think about the crossing of the Jordan and look at all the people who did the journeying through the wilderness. And it was like half of them who refused to cross?
The entire generation that left Egypt had to die.
See, that's hard too. But also history repeats itself sometimes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that has to die, but I'm just saying, like, I see some of that resistance because they have received such powerful prophecies and they've been amazing leaders and they've seen such life and how they've been functioning, and it has served such a purpose for the kingdom, like big time revivals, millions of people saved, huge life given, right? But then it's like the next transition they may not just be able to go to. And I kind of hate to say that. I would like to think that this is for everybody.
Yeah. I think it can be for everyone. Bree and I have had this conversation about like immortality and like, is immortality for everyone? And I think the like, I think the door on actually experiencing immortality is like cracked open. I don't think it's fully open and people are just like pouring through, but I do think that it's cracked open. And so as people flow through, it'll open wider and wider for the greater population. But, and I do think it's a choice that everyone who's alive now will probably be presented with. You know, I think it's likely in the next 10 years it'll be a thing. But does that mean everyone's going to choose it? Like, if you're in your 90s and you've lived your whole life, like almost to some extent, Christianity looks at death as like this beautiful thing that finally all of the aches and the pains and the heartaches and everything gets washed away and you get to walk into perfection, which there's probably truth in that. But to fully like step into that after like 80 years of believing that you want death, like
Right.
that, are those people going to choose it? Maybe some of them, but I do think that it's likely that some won't, because the cost of what they have to give up would feel too great.
I think you're right. And it just makes me then hope within all hoping that I never get too rigid in my beliefs. You know what I mean? Like, I want to cross the river when it comes. Like, I want to still be able to continue on. And if we're talking about immortality, do we not have to be able to continually be pliable? Because there are ages that come and pass, right? So we had the prophetic movement, and there are even some who were in leadership in that who have fully moved over into the mystical stuff and into the seeking for all. And I think that might be part of it. Like, I don't want to get so stuck in this that I can't see when God opens another door. When like the door to immortality is cracked, but when it's open, do I still want to go? No, thanks. I'll stay out here. It's fine.
Yeah.
You know, or when it gets open to whatever, knocking or whatever is next. I only say that because, ask, seek, knock.
Yeah.
I want to be open to that. And I want to be able to go with wherever the Lord is leading. But I also, I guess I just hope that's in my destiny too. Because I do think there are some people who completely serve a purpose and maybe aren't even meant to move forward into the next age or whatever. I don't know. I feel like this is a delicate matter. Like, I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm really, I don't know. I think it's so relationship based. What do you think about that, Josh?
I do agree. I think it's a very delicate thing because because to some extent we are hypothesizing about a future that's not here yet. Like, immortality isn't something that is readily available at the moment for anyone who chooses it. And so we're sort of just like talking about, well, this is what it could be like. And this is what the Christian mystic movement might look like as it grows. This is what the prophetic movement might look like as it grows into something else. And so it's a lot of like hypotheticals, but that is like to the original point of this episode, like that seeking, that asking, that is how we define ourselves as someone who is asking the questions.
Yeah.
Who's willing to look at the hard things, who's willing to look at, maybe not everyone's going to get there. Maybe not everyone's going to choose that. Like, that's a hard thing to look at. That's especially when you have family. Like, nobody wants anyone to die. And honestly, I think just the fact that, like, even as kids, there's something in us that, like, screams, this isn't right when someone dies, should show you that we were born with immortality in us.
Yeah.
We were born for the next thing. And I think as we move forward, we will have a clearer picture of what this next step is, in like whether it's mysticism or whether we call it something different. Like, as we just keep walking, just keep moving down the road, and eventually it'll become more clear. Like, I think one of the biggest things I've learned in my life and my walk with God is that very rarely does he show me the entire path all at once. Like, I think sometimes he shows me something that's like a ways out in the future to like pique my interest and to let me know what direction I'm going. But then a lot of times it's just a step-by-step unveiling of it.
I would agree. I love that you said rarely does he show you the whole path, because I've never experienced the whole path.
Yeah.
But I agree. I do. And sometimes having that forewarning, though, is probably really necessary, can also be really difficult. But most of the time it serves as that like North Star or whatever. You know what I mean? It is like, well, there's that beacon that I know I'm going that way.
Yeah.
Or Star of David. I guess if we're talking scripture, it's Star of David, right?
Yeah. There's something pointing us. There's something guiding us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is wild. I don't know. I feel very full of honor for those who've come before us.
Yeah.
Truly. Like, if any of this sounded like bad mouthing, it was not. I really I appreciate for all of the work that's been done so that I can seek on my own.
Yeah. I mean, what a foundation that we get to stand on. Yeah. And what an opportunity to, with honor, get to show people possibly a new step they can take. Right.
That's true. Okay. Good stuff today, Josh. Thanks for being on this journey. Yes, I feel like it was a journey of a conversation.
As they all are.
Right. Mm-hmm. And if we've said it once, let's say it again. I hope that any of this you might take and go seek on your own and find that relationship of your own with the Father and see what he might want to show you.
Yeah.
Because I think it will be glorious.
Same.
Cool. See you guys next time.
See you guys.
Hey, thanks for listening. Keep up with us along this journey by liking, subscribing, and becoming a member through YouTube.
Members get exclusive access to bonus content with our guests, deeper dives into topics, and a look into other projects. We're glad to have you here. See you next time.